get us started. All right. Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, being January 25th, for the first LTI Roundtable of 2022. I'm going to run through some of the pre-matter, a couple of announcements, and then I'll hand it off to Claude for our primary topics. So, hello, everyone. Please be aware that this meeting is held under the intellectual property rights policy adopted by IMS Global Learning Consortium, and that you can download a copy of that policy on the public website at imsglobal.org/IP. At this time, I would ask that anyone in attendance inform me if they are personally aware of any claims under any patent application or issued patents that would likely be infringed by an implementation of the specification or other work product that is the subject of this meeting. You need not be the inventor of such patent or patent application in order to inform us of its existence, nor will you be held responsible for expressing a belief that turns out to be inaccurate. I'd also call your attention to the participant agreement. That one you can find at imsglobal.org/PA. And that one basically states that the work done in the groups should not be shared outside of the membership. And then a couple of announcements. So as Martin was alluding to, our first quarterly of 2022 is coming up in February, end of February, beginning of March in Atlanta, Georgia. You can find information on it and registration details at the link I just placed into the chat. There will be 2 full days of LTI activities. There will be a number of other activities that are taking place around other IMS specifications, as well as the Digital Credential Summit, which is happening concurrently. So visit that link there for more details and to register. And then second, just to plug the other big event that's coming up, which is Learning Impact for 2022. That one's happening in June, and that one's in Nashville, Tennessee. It would be great to see members at these events. It's always wonderful to get together and be able to kind of do this work in person. Also, for contributing members, the LTI work group meets in this same slot every Tuesday, and we're always welcoming of new people who come in and share their needs and their ideas on how to make digital teaching ecosystems better. So those are the things that I wanted to plug. Any Claude or Martin, anything else you want to plug before we go ahead and kick off here?
Nope.
All right. Well, in that case, I will hand it over to one of the chairs of the LTI working group, Caliper Connector, who's going to walk us through a presentation on what that group's going to be working on in the year 2022. So without further ado, Claude, go ahead and take it away.
All right. So half of the presentation is already done. So I'm one of the co-chairs of the LTI working group and also an application architect at Cengage, where we work on the LMS integration. And I've been also a Moodle contributor. And this is not really what we're going to be working in the 2022. It's what we've been working for quite a while. And it's already specifications that have reached a point where there is some level of adoption. There are written specifications. So it's what we call what's beyond LTI advantage. So we're going to do a quick view of all of those work that exist around, and then you can ask questions at each time. And I hope to do some demos whenever possible. So I'll hand it over to a few folks when that happens. So yeah, so this is the ones we're going to cover. So it seems like a lot, but I won't spend too much time on each one of those. But it's just to give an idea of what's cooking. So first of all, I'm going to do quickly a recap of LTI Advantage, because as you know, LTI Advantage is not that much a specification. It's a bundle of specifications. So it starts with the LTI 1.3, which is LTI Core, which is based on the OpenID and OAuth, and is the ability to launch a resource through an LTI launch. So that's the LTI 1.3 Core, to which we add deep linking, which is a flow to bring content, kind of a picker flow to bring content into the learning platform. And you have the assignment and grade services, because at the end, often you want to report progress and also have a better API to access the learning platform gradebook. So that's the assignment and grade service. And you have names and roles to access the rostering of the current course. So that's basically the LTI Advantage bundle as it exists now. And so what's next? So first thing I'm going to mention is browser storage. And so I don't know if you've noticed, but maybe your tool has recently suffered from amnesia. So you're in your iframe and suddenly you forget where you are or who you are. And you all know that's because of the cookie restrictions in iframe. So the group has been very, very busy trying to find an alternate solution for that. And so the solution is built around this mechanics of Windows post message, which allows frames within the browser to communicate. So the first thing the group did is come up with a very lightweight request response protocol over Windows post message to allow the tool frame to communicate with the learning platform main window. And so once we've got that in place, then there was the ability to set up not a cookie store here. So we to replace that. So basically now the tool in its iframe can create a piece of something that's not a cookie and use this Windows post message to store it in the learning platform main window, which is going to stay around. And so when the frame navigates, it's able to communicate and get back the state from the cookie replacement store. So that's basically something that's been put in place to allow for a way for an iframe to store state so that when the iframe navigates from Windows page to page, it can rely on the main learning platform to get back the state of where it was. And that's being key to the OpenID flow, which requires, which have been relying on cookies to set up a state to allow cross-site request attack. And so this is a way to go around it, but it's also a way to store your states even past the OpenID launch. So that's the browser storage proposal here. Any question on that? Okay. So this is coming up, I think, pretty soon. Correct me if that's not right, but to Blackboard, Brightspace, and Sakai as platforms, and Sugi and Turnitin are the two tools that I know that have been already implementing that. And there's been a roundtable that you can look back in October, which has more information about that specific new specification. So that's browser storage. So next one is dynamic registration. So dynamic registration, we've talked a lot about it last year. And so the idea, I don't know if you've done the work of setting up an LTI 1.3 tool, but it's because it's based on OpenID and OAuth, it's a lot of communication, a lot of data that needs to be exchanged both ways. And so what we've been putting together is a specification that basically does this, automate this exchange of information both ways. So that's the dynamic registration. And so the way it works out is that now with this specification, a tool can just give a registration URL to the platform. Then the admin enters this URL into a registration UI and just say go. And from there, the platform will go back to the tool and to this URL and add a configuration endpoint and a registration token. Then from there, the tool can use the configuration URL to get the OpenID information and OAuth information from the platform, store it on its side, and use the registration endpoint to register to the platform, which the platform is going to issue a client ID when the registration is successful. So that comes back. This can be saved, and all is done automatically. And at the end, you can just do a Windows post message from the tool back to the platform saying this registration is complete, you can move on. And then from here, usually in the platform, you just have to turn it on. And for that, I have a quick demo that because it actually goes very quickly. So this is here a test tool, an LTI test tool, and you see like the Moodle instruction to install a tool. That's all the things you need to copy, right? That's all this kind of data that you would have in a typical LTI flow. You would have to copy over, and you have the same kind of information that the platform is going to give to the tool to put back on the tool side. But with dynamic registration, you just take a URL here. You go to your tool, and I wanted to show it to you that it happens in many elements. I'll do it in here in Moodle because that's the one I tested just before. But you go in here and you say, I want to register a tool. You put it in here. You said add LTI advantage. It gets information from the platform, register with the platform, gets a client ID. It's all done. It's all completed. All the information has been exchanged. You can close it. The tool is installed, ready to be activated. You can activate, and now you can go into a course and just use the tool in here, and then you can see the tool is right there actually, and you can just go and use it. You see, this is deep linking, all configured, ready to use. And so you see how you could easily deploy an LTI advantage tool. And the same thing exists in D2L. So you see standard is you would have to enter all of this information. But if you go dynamic, you just put the URL, and it's going to configure everything for you. And the same thing in Sakai, where in Sakai you would go to, I logged out. You would go to your tool, external tool. Sorry, I'm a bit lost sometimes here, right there. And LTI advantage, you say you want to register a tool like Robotest, you would go in here, use LTI configuration, you would put the URL, and it will configure everything for you. Well, not this one. I didn't try it before, but that worked. We've used it all the time, but this is just my local Sakai. Anyway, but that's the idea here. You have it in one go, you can do dynamic registration. So that's the dynamic registration. And so that's this here. Any question on that? Okay. So have you seen it's in Brightface, Moodle, and Sakai, and we use it in those three platforms. And Cengage can manage harmonize, but there might be other tools in the meantime that have been.
So Claude, you're saying Cengage with your customers when you integrate into those
yes,
platforms.
Yes.
That's in production.
Yes, we're using that in production. That's what we use for our Brightspace, Moodle, and Sakai customers. We send them the dynamic registration URL to configure Cengage. Yeah, we always pass them the manual steps just in case they want to go through the manual way, but the preferred way is the dynamic registration. Because if you do the manual way, it always goes wrong because so many things to copy paste left and right. Somehow, even copy paste, you always end up being with the wrong thing copied in the wrong place. So we much prefer the use of dynamic registration. Like that. And so the next one, course groups. So that's also been a feature that's been asked for quite some time, is the ability for a tool to get to know the groupings that exist within a learning platform. So you're in your learning platform and you can define a simple group. So here, the thing with course group is really the groups that are defined within your course. So in your course, an instructor will maybe set up a group of, I call here the funny ones and the scary ones. So they group their students, and they can also create groups of groups. So which is fairly typical. So you would create a set of and split the enrollment within groups inside that set. And so the API here for course groups allows a tool to get all the group sets and all the members in those groups. But it's very simple. You just get memberships. There are no group roles or things like that. There is no group grades. It's just the ability to get the groups. And that allows for a tool that basically relies on groups to avoid to have to redefine groups within the tools. You can just import the groups that exist in the learning platform and reuse them within your tool. So it works like any other service. You would get into your LTI message. You would have a new claim that exposes you the group's endpoint. From there, you can query the different piece of information about the groups. So that's there. I don't know if Eric joined.
I did. I'm here.
Oh, you did. Good. Are you still okay to do a little course group demo?
I am.
Okay.
At the risk of getting into a very sensitive topic, I just want to say I got my second dose of my shingles vaccine yesterday, and it knocked me out cold. I haven't felt this bad since my first dose of the shingles vaccine.
Oh, okay.
Whew. But hopefully I won't get shingles. All right, so you want me to?
Yes, if you don't mind. I think it's always good to when you can do a little demo.
I don't mind. So here we are. I'll show two different things. One is, so in Blackboard, you can create these ad hoc groups, what we're calling course groups, or context groups. I can't remember what we ended up on in the spec, but they're just ad hoc groups that the instructor creates. And the idea is you might have study groups for one set of people and a study group for another set of people, or you might have assignment groups. In Turnitin's case, they want to create groups for different teaching assistants to do the grading. And so the other thing to note is that at least in Blackboard and probably the other LMSs, you can have what are called hidden groups. Now in Blackboard, we require you to make a group set to put your groups in. That's just the requirement because we don't want two people in the same group set. So if it's a study group set, then you're going to have Bob and Sue in one and Fred and Sam in the other, but you don't want Sam in both of the study groups. So that's just the limitation. But you can also mark a group as hidden from students or unavailable so that students don't know who the other students are in the other groups. And that's just important for privacy reasons. So if I have an LTI link and I click on the LTI link and I go to, this is just our testing tool. It's got some UI to check all the LTI Advantage things, and I can go and get the group set. So I've got 2 different group sets. I can see what those are. I can get the groups for this course. Oh, sorry, this is groups for a particular user. So let's look at a particular user. Who do I have here? Where's my sub?
At the very top.
This is the instructor, so I don't want to do that. What I want to do is see if Tom is in there. So we're going to get the groups for Tom. And Tom doesn't have any groups, but that's okay. We'll find one. But the other thing I can do is I can go into our names and roles. This just does the get on the names and roles, but it also lists the groups associated with those. So Frodo has 2 group enrollments. Susie has 2 different group enrollments because we have both. We have two group sets there. And then if I go back and I say Sue and I go into groups, I see that Sue has 2 groups and there's the name, and one of them is hidden and one of them's not. So that's kind of just the fundamentals of the group API. It's really tightly coupled with names and roles service. If I go to a system that has a Turnitin assignment and I launch that Turnitin assignment, this is just an example of how you could use these groups. So I've launched as an instructor to the Turnitin Feedback Studio, and I can see all the students in the course and whether they've submitted or not. But I can also look by group sets. So Turnitin grabs the group sets from Learn, and there's a Tuesday group and a Thursday group. And if I just look at the Tuesday group and I'm patient, I see that just those 2 users. And this is really useful for the grader who is only grading the students in one group, and then another grader would be grading the students in another group. So you can toggle the groups within the application, and this is really helpful for a lot of tools. And that's all I have.
And that's great. That's great. And really here it shows again that the groups is not opinionated about what you do with groups. It just shares information about groups. And so an instructor can set up the groups and use them within the tools the way they want. So here's for doing grading grouping, but it's really up to the tool and platform to decide what to do with those groups. They're just, the membership is just exchange between the platform and the tool. Yes. Oops. Let me carry on then. So that was Scrum here. That was course groups. So have you seen it exists in Blackboard and it exists in Turnitin? I think it exists also in Harmonize, and in Moodle it's implemented, but there is a bit of a backlog. With Moodle is waiting for the 4 release, so it's probably going to be in 4.1. So that's where it stands for the course groups. And so the next one is submission review. So submission review is really like closing a gap with the assignment and grade service. So with the assignment and grade service, you're able to return grades, but even status on the grade, like it's in progress, it needs grading and those kind of things. But there is no way to, so it's a service integration, but there is no way to have a workflow that lets you go back from a grade back to the tool. And that's exactly what submission review does. It allows to launch back in the tool in the context of a grade, or if you want a grade cell, but that's a bit reductive. It's anywhere that says basically a result from a submission work from a student. So from there, you can launch back in the tool. So the way it works out is here in this simple example, you would have a way to launch any of those submissions, even those that needs grading. When you click on that, it reopens, goes back to the tool, but it's going to say to the tool, hey, this user is launching this resource and this line item, which is this gradebook column. And for this user, which is a row, it's telling you for this user, for this line item, open the work that's behind the grade. So it opens the submission. And from there, once you open the submission, you can review it, obviously, but you can also, as an instructor, grade it. And then you go back to use assignment and grade service to post the score back and toggle from needs grading to being graded. So you see here, AGS can be used to say, hey, is this needs grading? You go into wherever you are doing your grading, you click on it, it's launched back in the tool in the context of that user and that submission. You can do the grading and send AGS, a grade back through AGS. And this can also be used also for students, right? The student can review their work and review their submission. And other students may also be access other students' submission in the context of peer grading. So one student would launch through submission review in the work of another student to do peer grading. So that's all the work around submission review. For this, I don't know if Chuck, you're still open to do a little demo on Sakai on that, because Sakai has been the first one to implement the whole thing, I think. So
Ready.
Cool. All yours. Let me stop sharing.
Okay, so this won't take too long. So I am a teacher. We have in our assignments workflow, we have the ability to add an LTI tool as an assignment destination. And when you add that LTI tool, you use a deep link flow. And in that deep link flow, the tool indicates that it is capable of, yeah, I know, there we go. The tool indicates that it's capable of handling the assignment submission and with for user. So I've got this set up with a couple of students. The first thing we see is the use of the assignments and grade service about grading progress and activity progress, and that's all been done. So if we look at assignment 2, we'll see that Haruki has not yet sent their assignment in. And so let's go right ahead and send an assignment in for Haruki. I got to move my Zoom controls. So Haruki sees that, let me refresh the page to make sure we're good here. Yeah, Haruki sees he's got an assignment, and this is the student view. And this is a thing I call the sticky grader. And the idea, I built this little tool. This is actually an LTI tool that I built in Sugi. And the idea is that everybody can put stickies. I like this car. Put that sticky in. And now at this point, if I go back to the teacher, watch this submitted date, you will see that now the teacher is notified that it's been submitted. And so that actually is not submission review. That is simply using assignments and grade service, but there is a little bit of extension to deep link to say, I want submission review. Because this next thing is submission review. And so what's going on here now, really quick, is this is linking to a different page of the tool. This is the actual grading page, which I could get you to, but there is a per user grading page. And so This is what the teacher would do is just launch normally if they didn't have submission review and then navigate to the student and find them. But I've navigated straight to Susan Harden's submission. I can view and animate it as the teacher now, and I can say, here's our cool. And then I can go and give her a 42, which is a fine score. And so then we've had the grade submitted to the server, and our little grader just goes right to the Hiroki's, and I can take a look at Hiroki's homework, and I say, here's, oops, sorry, here's our better. And then I go back and give the student a grade. This is all in the LTI tool. I'll give the Hiroki 42 as well, which is another fine grade. And then I can go back into the assignments and I can take a look at Sticky Grader 2. And you can see all the scores have come up and the due dates are happening. And that's all I have for you today.
And it's great. And it really shows how it closed the gap having a submission review, because before you could report grades, but you were kind of a dead hand. You would have to find your way back to the grade. But now you can really complete the workflow. Super. Okay. All right. Next stuff here. So that was submission review. So next in line. So yes, so we've seen it in the wild in Tsugi. I think Turnitin also is ready for that, and in Sakai. But I think well, I won't. Other platforms can chime in if they want, you know, to notice. But I think this one ranks pretty high also. Anyway, so next in one is the activity item. So this one you see here in the quiz, usually in the LTI world, you can import a quiz, you can import an assignment, and then you take it and then you have a grade. But here it takes one layer deeper than that. You don't import a quiz, but you put within your quiz one question, what's called one item. So that's actually LTI within your native quizzing engine. So this really is the idea of activity item, is the ability to embed within a native activity an item that's actually played by through LTI. So that's really the idea of the activity item specification. And so the way it works out, the idea of this activity item is that all the bricks and pieces were almost already all there to be able to do that. So it's trying to just almost create a profile of the existing specification and wrap them up to fulfill that use case. So how does it work? When you're building your native quiz, you can actually use deep linking, but now what do you use deep linking for? To pick up a question, so to pick up an activity item. So there is a little bit addition to deep linking to say, I want to be able to import an activity item. So just a single item, not a full assessment. So here you can browse external question banks, for example, and bring back a question inside your native assessment. Then when it's time to deliver this assessment, then obviously there's going to be an LTI lunch to the question out there, and you're going to use assignment and grade service. When the student finalizes his answer, it's going to return a score back through assignment and grade services. And finally, when it comes to time to review the actual submission of that quiz, then submission review will come to play to be able to show the user's answers and be able to correct the user's answers just for that question. So that's the activity item specification. Any question on that? So this is the work that's been sponsored most by Brightspace, and actually, I think we may have a roundtable demo of that, but it's pretty nice to see it in play with the H5P. H5P bringing some interactive items within a Brightspace integration. So that's activity item. So the next one, this one is very short. It's more the idea of formalizing an existing placement, is to be able to, we've created a dedicated message to indicate that a lunch is done from some course navigation. So usually resource links, they're added in the main content of your course, but you have the menu or course navigation placement. So for that, we've created a dedicated new message type called context launch request. And this one would not contain resource links because now it's not a resource. It's not a resource. This is just a course navigation. And also the fact that it's a specific message type fits very well with dynamic registration, because now when you do dynamic registration, you say this new URL is for context launch request. So that would inform the LMS that this link is to be placed as a course navigation. But outside of that, it's just the same LTI launch. It's just a new message type and no resource link claim. So that's a course navigation. And again, that's more or less already kind of in production through the course nav placement, but it's tried to specify that and standardize this placement. Again, hopefully we'll come up into a Moodle for 4.1. So that's course navigation. Almost there, almost there. Caliper Connector. So Caliper is all about sending, analytic events about what the user is doing. And so you're on your learning platform, and you're sending your learning platform is sending Caliper events to the learning record store. But suddenly you jump to a tool, and then that's a black hole because you don't know what happens in the tool, right? So what you would want is to get a unified story of all those events that's happening. So for that, there is a way for to allow the tool to connect to the learning record store and also send their event there. So the way it works out is that when you launch into the tool, you add a new Caliper endpoint, which is where to send those events, and a Caliper session. And really, the Caliper session is a key element. That is the glue that allows the to complete the story, because it will allow to understand which user and in which context this is happening. So without this session, you would just have a bunch of events that would be disconnected from what was happening in the course. So when you click on the link, you go to an external tool, gives a Caliper endpoint and a Caliper session. The tool will use these credentials, these LTI credentials, to get a token with the scope to post to the learning record store. So it gets a token. Then once it gets the token, it has the endpoint, it has the token, it has a session. So it can send events with a session ID to the learning record store. And using the session ID as a continuation identifier, then you can build the story of what's happening in that course for that user. So that's the Caliper connector. So that's pretty cool, but not seen in the wild. So I don't know if anybody's done work on that, but that is a Caliper connector. Proctoring, so the proctoring is work that's done by another working group, which is the proctoring working group. And right now, the current state of the specification is really focused around the delivery of proctored assessment. So what does it? It tries to engage, to define a specification, to engage a proctoring, to start a proctoring session before to start an assessment. So how does it work out? When the student is about to start an assessment that is to be proctored, then there would be an LTI launch to the actual proctoring tool to say that we want to start a proctoring session. And then the LTI tool will do whatever, the proctoring tool will do whatever it needs to set up a proctoring session, whatever that means, either being automated or connect with a live proctor, totally up to the tool. But at the end, the proctoring tool is going to return back to the learning platform saying, the proctoring session has been established, you can go to the delivery of the quiz. So you go to the delivery of the quiz, and there is an option from the proctoring to send back live events through a service call about what's happening when you take the quiz. So that's optional, like to report any incident real time. But at the end, when the assessment is complete, then there is another call back to the proctoring tool to say the proctoring has been complete and you can stop the proctoring from happening. So that's the proctoring V1 that's basically been out there for LTI. And there's still work ongoing on that, but that's the state of it for now. That's proctoring. And yes, so I think Blackboard has done a fair bit of work on that, and I put Proctoring on a log there, but I don't know if that's totally accurate. There might be more now. And so I think that might be the last one there. So the data privacy launch. So as so the idea here is that when you ask to know what's the when the student goes to their institution around accessing their private data and getting a sense of where they are erasing that data, it's a lot of work for the admin, because all those tools, they fan out to a bunch of tools, and then you would have to communicate with each one of those tools through their own channels to understand what the data that exists for each one of the institution users into those integrated tools. So the idea here is to have a launch point that allows for the admin to say, what is the data that you hold for this user, and even expose the option to delete it. But that's not an API here. It's really a launch point that allows to launch somewhere in the tool, so that the tool could expose the controls around data privacy, like get and delete. But this way, at least it would centralize for the admin the ability to have a bunch of tools, and you say launch the privacy information for a given user. You launch for a given user, and it would tell you the data it has for that user, and then operation on that data, like a deletion. So that's also leveraging this new claim, like for user. So when you click tool aid, it says data privacy launch request for this user, and you get this personal data and actions that you can do on that. That's the data privacy launch. All right, and so I think so. Saka is already there. So and I think that's it for now. And it was a lot of, it's already quite a fair bit of stuff, but we keep working on other things. But we also want, that the things we work on are grounded into some kind of.
Chuck is offering a demo of the privacy launch if you want.
Oh, sure. Well, we have time for that. So sure, go ahead.
Everybody stayed well within their time, and so what the heck, right?
Exactly.
Have some fun.
Exactly.
Okay, this is going to be really, so one of the things about the privacy launch is it's kind of an admin thing, at least for now. And so this is the admin screen, and if at some point this is where you install them and configure them. And so if you've got the right thing, and it gives you this privacy launch, right? So you go into this privacy launch, and then it insists that you have credentials, and then you got to sign in. And this is what you see. Now, the mistake is before I did this demo, it was working, and I expired everybody, so I have no one to expire. So I'll show you what it looks like if you have some data to expire. And so you get this screen, and it's got this button and what this particular thing, you can see it here, it's going to basically throw away the PII data. It doesn't throw away learner activity. It's just going to throw away PII data. And I'm going to throw away PII data on one of my production systems. And so there you go. And so that's the basic idea. It kind of is a launch from an admin context to another admin context. And there'll be more things to do here, but I just wanted to get this bit started so that we could make sense of what privacy launch really is supposed to do.
And this interface you're seeing from Chuck, that's an example of what it could look like. Some corporations will just be like, oh, you have to, email us or go through some long process. Some might actually give those tools right there, like Chuck was showing. So, the tools behind the launch that the provider gives are not defined by the specification, just the ability to say, we want to do this on behalf of a user. And so Chuck was showing a nice implementation, but that's not actually part of the spec. It's just the moving the user, which was seamless and beautiful on that.
Well, yeah. And so that was, and Bracken, is the key is that my tool has capabilities, and my tool has capabilities. And by getting the privacy launch, I know to activate those capabilities, but each tool will have its own capabilities. Victor, no, it doesn't do the for user part yet. So
thanks for demoing that. And I think Martin is available for demo. So going back here, step back to the very beginning, browser storage, just a quick reminder. we use Windows post message to store not a cookie to a not cookie store, and then you get back later on. So I think Martin is going to demo that to us right now. Stop sharing again.
Yeah, do a quick demo of this one. So if I find the right one to share. Yeah, so obviously this is just going to look like a normal LTI launch. So from a demo perspective, it can sometimes be a little bit difficult to get across what's happening. Here, I'm just using Eric's test Blackboard instance, and I'm going to launch into my locally running Turnitin instance. This will hopefully go out in the next week or so to production on Turnitin. But this here I've got set up in my browser as my no cookies browser. So this has you can see third-party cookies are all blocked. So that means that anything inside an iframe that isn't on blackboard.com is going to be blocked. So I'm going to launch in here, and this is going to do the full OpenID Connect flow, which will go to Turnitin, back to Blackboard, back to Turnitin, and then load our inbox. So you can see we've got there without any issues, and Turnitin has no cookies at this point. So the way that we've handled this, you see down here, I've added in some extra logging because it's sometimes hard to see how post messages work. So what I do is I log out the post messages, and you can see here we're making a request to the capabilities. So we send a post message to the parent frame. So you can see here it's requesting to the parent frame, asking for capabilities. It's just saying, what are your capabilities? And then it responds back. And this is Blackboard saying, hey, I support get data and put data. And there's a specific frame that lives in. So when we do the next request and we say, hey, I want to put data, we're making that same request. We're doing it specifically to Blackboard's domain. In this case, this is using Eric's test instance. So like a production version of Blackboard, that would be developer.blackboard.com, which is like their centralized service where they want to store that. We're targeting this specific frame to say, I want to store this data in this frame. And so you can see the request here. We're storing our state, and we've got the value. And then in the response, it's just returning saying, yes, that was what we stored, and the key and the value. And then that was the first request in the OpenID Connect hop. And then the second request, when we did the launch and got the ID token, we wanted to check that the state was still there. So we did the same thing again. We asked for the capabilities, we got the capabilities, and then rather than doing a put, we did a get. And so we did the get data. You can see here, we just asked for that state, and we got the state and the value back, which means that the state was successfully stored in the parent frame. And even though we don't have access to cookies, we stored that data and retrieved it back and maintained our state between the redirects. So that's all there. From an end user point of view, there's no difference. It's completely transparent to the end user, but it's a way that we can get around the restrictions that browsers put on being able to use cookies.
Awesome.
The only other thing I would say about this is that this specification as a whole was built as a base that we can potentially add more to down the line. So with Claude's little diagram at the end showing all of the potential things that we're looking to work on in 2022 and beyond, now that we've cracked post messages in a sense, so this is like in browser messaging between the tool and the platform. Now that we have that capability, we can add more functionality, whether that's saying, hey, resize the window that I'm in, or I'm done, close me and move on to something else. We can add these kind of specifications and functionality down the line. So yeah, lots to come from that standpoint.
Cool. Claude, I think it's time to transition to any questions related to your presentation or others. So please feel free to put them in the chat or ask if you have any.
Yeah, I'm putting back the list of because it was quite a few, so just putting back the list in there. Just someone remember. Oh, I had a question on that one, particular. Oh, by the way, I mean, from a status here on those specifications, a lot of those are public member final draft. Bracken, can you give a little bit of summary of where people could find those specifications?
I scared Claude from saying something earlier on. So
yes.
A lot of these are in member draft where we haven't had enough implementers or interest from members to push them forward towards certification or getting publicly listed yet, and so they're in various different states. But the ones we're kind of dynamic, there we go. I couldn't think of dynamic registration, Claude. My brain got stuck. So for example, LTI dynamic registration just went through the IMS IP review process, and now it's in a public final draft state instead of just a member public draft. And so we're hoping to get more people out there looking at that and implementing it. The group one, we're trying to move towards a public draft as well, though it's behind the dynamic registration ones. And then we've been talking about the browser storage one in chat. We're trying to make sure it gets enough security review and tests and stuff, but we're very interested in anyone who wants to see that and give feedback and try experiment with it. And then the other ones, they're all in various states, and they're just kind of looking for people who want to implement them and try them. So if any of these are of interest, and please talk with us, and we're happy to help you work through implementation and find other partners who would like to implement those with you. And that's kind of the main thing that'll drive any of these forward, is just some groups working on implementations. But dynamic registrations available, go do it. It's awesome.
Yeah, and this list here is what basically has been reached a level of some maturity that it's at least pretty safe to start experimenting and doing first implementation of those. They might change on the margin, but they're pretty stable. But then there is other things that if there are other works that you would like the group to work on, definitely you can propose to the group. And what we're always looking is what the ideal situation is that if you can work with a learning platform on working on a solution about the real world solution, and then you can craft a solution from there and use the LTI working group as a way to get feedback on the solution you're working on, and so that it's more likely to be a final specification without too much changes along the way. So it's a good way, even if you're working on your own stuff with the learning platforms, to use the working group as a way to get early feedback. Is that, could this become a standard? Would that work that way? Would you accept that, or would you see different way to do it? And this way there is more chance that the work you're doing ends up being a standard that you will find implemented elsewhere after. All right. Any other question on all that?
Claude, there were some requests for you to start making stickers with your little graphics. So you should consider it.
No problem. No, CC what?
I should get you to design the learning impact swag.
Maybe we can do a merge of all of those. Anyway. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Claude. Thank you, everybody else who chipped in with demo work as well. As I noted in the chat, the recording to this meeting will be posted up in the same place as all the other ones. You can grab that link and check back on it at any time. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon. So have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey.